Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 39. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. Today we're going to talk about the Cesky Fousek, and I'm kind of glad we waited until deeper into this series to talk about them because, frankly, their history is at best convoluted and, in my opinion, fairly poorly documented. It's kind of riddled with political upheaval and wars and instability and famine and all sorts of bohemian history that really affected the dogs and the documentation of what may or may not would have been really even a pure breed. The history goes back to the 1600s, where you'll find references to wire-haired pointing griffons and stickle hares and illustrations of dogs that look like Cesky Fouseks. And honestly, if not for Craig Koshik's book, Pointing Dogs Volume 1, I really wouldn't be able to tell you much about the history. But Koshik says, when referring to the first time that Cesky Fousek appears in the official Czech registry, which is around 1883, he says, at the time, crossbreeding was still a fairly common practice among hunters who simply wanted a good hunting dog. So the Cesky Fouseks of the late 1800s were more of a type of dog than a pure breed. That's probably not a lot different from how most, if not all, breeds were established. I think the Cesky Fouseks were just late in really establishing a name and a stud book or registry. We do know that they gained FCI recognition in May of 1963, but the FCI refers to them as the Bohemian Wire-Haired Pointing Griffon. So to me, that just makes it a little bit muddier. The earliest records of Cesky Fousek in North America are riddled with wire-haired pointing griffons, stickle hares, so even that's a little bit confusing. And you'll hear later in the episode with our guest, Anna Artz, that they were originally managed or controlled, or whatever breed clubs do, by the Wire-Haired Pointing Griffon Club of North America. By way of breed standard, males stand 23.5 to 26 inches tall, so they're pretty tall dogs. Females 23 inches to 24.5 inches at the shoulders. And they have a rough, wiry coat, which can be colored dark roan, brown with ticking, typically on the chest or on the forelegs, or brown. Before we kick off with Anna, I need to thank my Patreon patrons who voluntarily support this show financially by pledging $3 per month. And if you'd like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/thewopost and sign up, where you can also receive monthly exclusive blog content. The most recent blog discusses some best practices for preparing to hunt in remote areas. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. The best recommendation is to never go it alone. Always hunt with a buddy. Now let's pick it up with Anna Artz, the president of the Cesky Fousek North America Club, owner of Cesky Fouseks for over 20 years, and a small animal veterinarian from California. Anna, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure. It's quite nice to be here. Thank you.
And fresh off of a trip to the Czech Republic, no less.
Yes, you did hear about that. That was last month. I took my dog to compete in a European event that was particular for this breed of dog. So it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Quite fun.
Really cool. I really want to talk about that. I know you want to talk about it as well. But before we do, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Anna Artz. I am a California native and a veterinarian and hunter. I own a Cesky Fousek breed of hunting dog, and I'm currently on my third dog. And I am also the acting club president, as it turns out now, of the national breed called Cesky Fousek North America.
And how long have you been into bird dogs?
My entire life. So I am 51 years old, so it's spanning a few decades.
And did you, so this is your third Chesky, so you didn't start out with them. How did you start out?
So my story is pretty typical for a kid that grew up in a hunting family. My dad was an avid bird hunter in Northern California. I very faintly recollect that we had German Shorthair pointers, but very soon after we got into elementary school, I think my mother stepped in and the dogs were no longer a part of the family because we had a lot going on. But I grew up hunting with my dad and brother. We did a lot of dove hunting, quail hunting, pheasant hunting without dogs, actually, in my formative years. And then my dad later got into Brittany's, and so we hunted behind his dogs. I kind of maintained that outdoor lifestyle all through sort of my college years. It's just something our family did. And when I had an opportunity to get a dog of my own, I didn't intend to get a bird dog, actually. I was single at the time, and I wanted to have a intelligent, athletic, and long-lived breed of dog to be my companion, my running, jogging partner, and a dog that might give somebody that might cause me trouble some pause, just intimidation factor. So I was looking at Dobermans and standard poodles. And then in a phone call with my dad, he actually said, "Sweetheart, why don't you get a versatile breed of dog? You know, you want an intelligent, long-lived, athletic dog." So therein lies the hunt for a dog breed that I was interested in. And let's be honest, we have aesthetics that tend to please us, right? We like the look of
Hmm.
a bird dog. So I liked the fuzzy-faced bird dogs, the Griffons, the poodle pointers, the German wire hairs. They just looked to me just athletic, robust, handsome. And so that's kind of how I started my search in the bird dogs, and I fell into Cesky Fousek, I think quite by chance, by accident, and in large part because that club was one of the few that actually called me back, if you can believe it.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I believe that absolutely.
So, as it is, when people start hunting for puppies, people either don't call you back or they call you back and they kind of give you the third degree interview you, and there's something you say they don't like. I do think being in California was a turnoff to out of state breeders. They just didn't like that I lived here because there's a perception that Californians don't hunt. I do also think that being my first bird dog, and I was honest with people, turned people off. And I do think and sense at some time because I was a woman, you know, women don't hunt. You know, there might have been something there, old school, where people just were like, I don't know. So I tended to return the phone call, and when the club that was at that time, not the Cesky Fousek Club, but it was actually the Wire-haired Pointing Griffon Club of America, they were doing outcrosses to Fousek. It's a long, complicated story that's beyond this podcast, but essentially they were bringing new genes in. And I didn't care about the mix or whatever. I appreciated that they were forthcoming. They invited me out. I went to one of their tests, and the very first discipline I ever saw was a duck track. And I mean, it was jaw dropping for someone who's never seen that before, experienced it. And I turned around and I said, I want one of those. If you're telling me that dog's going to find that duck scent on water and get that bird, I want one of those. So that's kind of where it started.
And so how long ago was this that, really where you decided it was going to be Chesky Fousek?
22, almost 23 years ago. So right when I
Okay.
started my career.
That's interesting because when you said that, maybe somebody might not have been interested in selling a versatile sporting dog to a woman, I think nowadays people would be perhaps more interested, all other things being equal, if you had, a woman and a man of, all other variables under the name being exactly equal. I think I'd rather sell a dog to a woman just because I've seen so many amazing female dog handlers.
Yes, and I can also attest, being a woman hunter through many decades here in California. As a kid, I was just kind of this little tag along, and nobody takes you seriously. And then I started to really get into and get quite good with my shotgunning skills and just had an innate feel for the dogs. But I always felt oddball, because I was the only girl or only young lady. And my dad always encouraged me and supported me. It just was no different whether it was my brother or me hunting with dad or both of us. But I always felt a little off. And what's interesting, something happened, I think, in my 20s or 30s. It might have been some maturing and growing up. I sort of didn't care anymore what people thought. It was just this, for me, personal transition of, I know what I know, I love what I love, and I'm unapologetic for it. And people come in behind you and realize, wow, this person actually knows what they're doing. Nowadays, and I'm happy to say this, it's not special. Like it's very common to see women out there, particularly women without necessarily boyfriends or husbands. And I love that. So, but I will tell you, my personal experience was back then, it was a concern for people. They didn't outright say it, but you could sense it.
There's no question that there's the old man's club in the sporting dog world, particularly. But I think looking at it through the lens of NAVDA and AKC hunt tests and how those have really been a vehicle to change the sporting dog culture, and it's happening. If you go to a NAVDA utility test and you look at some of the women handlers and really how well they do and how well they score, right? It's happening, and I think the important thing is to embrace that as a community of sports people, sportsmen, whatever you want to call us, from the lens of the R3, right? Hunter recruitment, retention, and reactivation.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of funny side story. So current dog, my current Cesky Fousek, Aiden, from a very young age, my dog trainer, mentor, kind of took a liking to him and said, this dog's got a special kind of temperament and mindset, and you ought to try to do him in NAVDA and these higher end tests. And I had, quite frankly, no interest because I'm a bird hunter first. So his selling point to me was, listen, you can use these tests as a gauge to assess your where he is with training. That's all it is. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we'll do this. Long story short, we had tremendous success being very new, especially to NAVDA, in our utility test and our, what's the utility, the prep utility, the one before?
Yep. UPT.
UPT, yeah. So I did a UPT, smashed it out of the park without trying, Then there was the utility, did phenomenal prize one. We landed at the invitational, and a very interesting observation was made by a photographer that was sitting at one of those disciplines. It was the blind retrieve, which is a renowned, difficult discipline. It's a 100-yard retrieve, single command, retrieve to hand. And what was really freaking all of us out in the gallery, waiting, is that the first 4 or 5 handlers in our group bombed. Were coming back with pretty dejected faces. And then the handler before me was a woman. She went and her dog passed, did the discipline well. Then I was up. We had a good run. The dog passed that discipline. And then the lady behind. So when we finished the double mark retrieve, which comes right after the blind retrieve, the photographer assigned to that location came up to me and sort of fell in step as I was walking away and said, I really want you to know it was quite a pleasure to see you lady handlers today. Your dynamic and your relationship with your dog is quite distinct than from what he saw that morning with those particular gentlemen, handlers. It was different. It was softer. It was bonded. It was the dog wanting to do it as opposed to being forced to do it. So it's just a little interesting perspective that was shared unsolicited by a photographer.
Sure. There's something about I think, if we're going to continue to stereotype, I guess, maybe the personality of the average woman and how they relate to the dog and form a team versus the personality of the average man and how we tend to bring in bravado and probably dominate our dogs a little bit.
Yeah, and we've got to be careful to make, those generalizations, but it was just interesting in a setting with this group of handlers that the first group happened to really struggle, and then a female went up, and then I went up, and another female handler, and we did well. So fluke, luck, I don't know, but the photographer commented specifically on the eye contact our dogs made and the relationship the dogs had with us, which is great. You want that for the dogs.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll get back to the Cheskys here real quick. So it was the look of the dog, the obviously a little bit of the structure and size, which is kind of what you were originally looking for.
Yep.
And then that one event of the duck drag that said, yeah, that's the dog for me right there.
Yes, absolutely. And to be fair, had it been a wire hair or a poodle pointer club and I'd seen that, I probably would have fallen in love because it was so incredibly impressive to me that a versatile dog could do that work in the water, which is a really difficult, challenging environment. It's intimidating for dogs to be in deep water and follow their noses, but that drew me in, and I put my money down for a puppy right then and there. The other thing I appreciated for me, that club, I got a sense that I would have help with one phone call. That there were people there that would have my back just because I didn't know what I was doing and I was upfront about this being my first dog. So that was another selling point for me. And that was, 2 dogs ago.
So that dog that you watched at that training day was owned by a breeder?
Yes, in the club, correct. Yep.
Okay. There's a little bit of serendipity involved there then.
Correct. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's not particularly common dog by any stretch of the imagination.
No. So the thing that, I was thinking about the breed and the questions you might be asking, what is very obviously special about the dog right now, and we'll get into characteristics in a bit, is quite frankly, it's a numbers game. This is a rare dog breed, particularly in North America, but it is the effective breeding population worldwide currently stands at about 300. And that's across all continents. So that's giving you some perspective about where we're at. And in the U.S., the Cesky Fousek North America Club in total probably has about 300 dogs here. And we currently have, I think, 18 males in the breeding program and maybe 12 females. So this is not a numerous breed. People have never heard of it.
So now how does the breed club plan to address that? Is there a plan to keep the breed deliberately small and relatively unknown to probably only 2 hunters? Or is the plan to try to grow the breed and improve maybe a little bit of genetic diversity?
So, that's... You could answer that 5 different ways. There's a lot you just brought up there. So our challenge with the Cesky Fousek North America is we are too small for our own good right now. It is we don't have a viable, sustainable, long-term breeding population if we don't produce more puppies. Our problem is, and we've been really wrestling with this as a national breed club, is we currently only sell to hunters. Okay, which is fine. A lot of breeders feel that way with different versatiles, so that's not unique. The challenge is that we actually require and need our hunters to prepare these young dogs to come back for 2 evaluations. One is essentially the natural ability test, and the second one is the kind of like a UPT. It's the intermediate hunting dog test. Those tests allow our club to look at every single puppy, so it's required by all of our puppies to come back, so the entire litter is evaluated, so you can get a very good look at what you're producing. So are we, fitting the breed standard? Are the coats right? Are the temperaments right? Is the conformation right? Is the drive for water correct? And if you have a litter of 9 pups, but you only get 1 or 2 evaluated, those might be the superstars. what happened to the other 7? So we have a very honest assessment by looking at the entire litter, and you can see if there is an issue. The problem we're running into right now with people who absolutely are enamored with the breed, people like the shiny and new, to be honest, and that it's unique. That piques people's curiosity, but the big turnoff is our requirement presently to come back to the club within our club organization to test these dogs, because we only have 5 regional chapters in the United States. One's located in Washington State, one's in Idaho, the other is in the Heartland is in Wisconsin. We have a new chapter in Alabama, and then in the East Coast, Maine. So, East Coast to West Coast, if you've got a puppy, you may be looking at a 2-day drive to get somewhere. And that is something that some people say, I'm not signing up for that, which is a shame.
How do you enforce that as a breed club or as a breeder?
How do we enforce it in terms of we need them to come back?
Mm-hmm. So let's pretend. Let's say let's say you're a breeder. I get a puppy from you under the auspices, under the contract that says, yeah, I'll come back, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then time period later, let's say, at 24 months, my dog's supposed to be evaluated. And I say, you know what? I decided I'm not going to do that. How do you handle that as a breed club?
So what's really good right now is that we're not running into that very commonly. So I would say probably 3 or 4 handlers a year fail to come to the test at the appropriate time frame. So we're not having a major issue, and I think part of it is the education and preparation up front, letting people know what is expected, and part of that education is we want people to fall in love with the breed and understand that to fall in, if you love the product, you have to understand the work that went in behind it. That could be said for any dog, breed or kennel across the board. But we want them to be a part of that process to protect this breed. We need this information, and missing information hurts our breeding program. So when people kind of understand that individual dog assessment is needed in the big picture, people generally follow through. We might have to, make a few phone calls and plead, but it's on faith a lot. There isn't any repercussions, and we don't ever want to talk about, carrying the big stick, but the understanding is if we don't see them back, they're not going to get a second puppy.
Sure.
Right. So pretty basic.
I think that's fair. And, as a breeder, I ask all my puppy buyers to test their dogs in natural ability, because it's easy for me. It's consistent. If they're dead set against they're anti-NAVDA people, I would ask them to do a junior hunter and a swim test. A video, just throw a bumper in the water and video it so I can just see what the dog is doing. I would love for them to do a confirmation evaluation with their dog as a grown dog, but these are all things that I think, across it in our breed club, the Small Munsterlander Club, we are challenged with, some people say, well, this is America, I can't tell people what to do. And they're not wrong, but I feel like it can be a little bit of a two-way street sometimes where, we chose you to buy, you came to me as a customer, and I respect that relationship. But there are other customers out there that will be committed, and it's on us as breeders to try and find the most committed people that are going to be the best fit for the dog, that are going to work with us so that we can continue to build better dogs. It's not about little plaques on the wall and ribbons and all these other things, right? It's about continuing to maintain the breed standard.
Yes. So here's what's interesting. I would say that when I was beginning to be involved with the club over 20 years ago, that was an incredibly difficult hurdle when we say that, that we maintain breeding rights on the dog. There's a general expectation that if your dog is good and is selected for breeding, male or female, you're understood up front that you'll produce a litter for the club. And then these tests, the natural ability and the intermediate hunting test, which is essentially the breeding test, I lost my train of thought. But early on, those restrictions, we call them obstacles, hoops to jump through, huge turnoff for 2 reasons. One, don't tell me what to do with my dog. That's kind of that American independent spirit, right? Like, it's my dog, I'm going to decide. So that graded against certain individuals, and that's not who we're looking for. But initially, it was a turnoff. And here's the tide has swung. When I was at the International Sportsman's Expo 2-3 years ago, and we talked to people about our controlled breeding program, it turned them on. They said, good for you. And I think it's because either as pet owners or gun dog enthusiasts, we're now seeing some detrimental breeding practices and what it's producing. Temperament, coat, health problems, recessive genetic disorders, too interrelated, whatever it is. And so there's now an argument to be said, hey, the reason a controlled breeding program works is we're doing all the work for you in terms of the genetic, evaluation, the confirmation evaluation, the health testing. It's all there for you. You just need to come and pick which litter you like, come do the test, and people now realize, wow, it's almost like a proven product is now reproducible, proven product is now available to this hunter, and people are now connecting the hoops they need to jump through and participate in the controlled breeding program and getting the dog of their dreams that's healthy, long-lived, will perform in the field. So.
Sure. And when you say control, it's not about controlling the market, it's about controlling quality.
Correct.
At the end of the day, so that
yes.
If you do come back and you want a second dog or a second puppy from this breed, whether you buy it from me or not, the things that I learn are contributing, to the breeders writ large across the breed.
Correct. Yes. I guess that I wish I could find a softer term than controlled breeding program, but it's simply, it means that, we are very, very carefully selecting the pairs, and we're factoring all the important variables, and those, decisions are done at the breeding committee level. So our club essentially acts as a co-op. That's another kind of unique thing for our breed club at the moment, where dogs are spread all over the U.S., but those that are put into the breeding pool, depending on the demand per year, that's the other thing. So if we only breed to meet the demand, so we want to have more demand so we can produce more litters, those pairings are put together, male and female, logistically speaking, geographically, can we put them together? And then, of course, the genetic sort of pairing, the coefficient of inbreeding and all that. Like, is this a good pairing? That all goes into it, but that's done for the puppy owner. Like, it's already there. So.
And this is managed pretty tightly then by the breed club.
Correct. So when people say to me, hey, do you have a kennel? Are you a breeder? I say, yes, my male dog has been bred. He's been a sire for the litter. One time only. We tend to breed our males once or twice only, and females perhaps twice with different sires. That is it, no matter how outstanding that male is, okay? But I don't have a kennel. My dog was called upon to be bred with a female, and then that female, the owner of that female, was able to have a kennel name per se, but everything was organized under the sort of the umbrella of the national club.
With a breed that small in numbers, and a breeding population that's extremely small, I think using a sire or using a stud more often to sire a dog, I mean, you're at such high risk for popular sire syndrome.
Yep.
You're at such high risk for inbreeding depression and all these things that would be absolutely detrimental to your breed. So you guys are the first breed that I've spoken with of all the versatile breeds that manage your system the way that you do.
Okay, yeah, and it's it's not for everyone, but it's necessary to protect this breed. Going back to what you mentioned, the sort of the long-term health and genetic viability of our North American dogs here, for 15 years, there was an extremely heavy emphasis on importation of puppies for people on the puppy request list. So there would be maybe a request for 30 or 40 puppies in a year for the U.S. Half we would produce domestically, and the other half we imported very specifically. So for about 15 years, we imported about 15 puppies every single year to get those genetics here. And thank God we've done that because you know what's happened with the CDC guidelines now, right, with puppy importation. And then in addition to that, we have strong ties with the Czech club because they're our sponsor, the Czech club. They helped the U.S. club gain FCI accreditation or recognition. But we are still importing semen. For example, we have looked at 2 males when I was over there last month for the World Cup. We went and looked at 2 males, and we're very interested in them based on paper, saw them in person, and we agreed to get semen for those dogs that we will use next fall. So we're constantly trying to kind of make sure we're good in that regard, but we absolutely need to build up the brand, build up the breed recognition, have people be interested in Cesky Fousek as a versatile hunter in the U.S. because I'd love for us to produce 100 puppies a year. We're doing a third of that right now, and that's not sustainable long term without constantly importing new puppies. So we don't want to be popular. We want to be healthy and viable, I guess is how I would phrase it.
Yep, viable, sustainable.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned DNA testing earlier. Have you guys standardized how you're doing that across the breed?
So, so all of our puppies, the entire litter, I think it's during their second puppy vaccines before they go home, has blood drawn. And that blood is submitted 2 places. One is for an embark profile. So we have a very extensive embark genetic profile for every single puppy that's, in our database. And then we also submit blood to the Cornell Biobank to save it for future research, DNA research. And that's been going on for at least 10 years now. And what's been extremely helpful in that regard is what we have discovered is we have carriers in our breeding, in our dogs. For example, the urate stone formation, copper storage disease, degenerative myelopathy, those have popped up. We do not have clinical illness that we're aware of right now in the dogs, but now that those markers are there, along with all the other parameters for selecting breeding pairs, we'll never put 2 carriers together that carry the marker for DM, the degenerative myelopathy, for example. So that's how we're utilizing it right now, and we're storing information for future. We may not have the technology at the moment, but we'll be able to go back into that stock, 10, 20 years into the past and do studies, research.
Have you guys been seeing the copper toxicosis for a while, or is that something that's recently popped up?
We just started looking for it, and it's exceedingly rare, but we tend to pay attention to anything that's there as a potential. So we're quite, and I'm not aware of any single dog in our club at the moment that has it. Yeah.
I think Embark may have just found the genetic marker for our small Munsterlanders, the genetic marker for copper toxicosis in our small Munsterlanders, because we've had several dogs, when I say several, I mean maybe 3 or 4.
Understood.
that have come back as carriers for copper toxicosis, and I'm aware of one right now that brings forward 2 copies of the genes, and she's pretty young. So, jury's out on whether or not she'll be symptomatic. We'll figure that out later on in life, I think. But I've seen, I think, 3 other dogs right now that are carriers. So one copy of the copper toxicosis gene.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at least I'm familiar with 2 of them, and they're both amazing dogs. So there are breeding decisions that are going to have to be made about those dogs, or either very deliberate decisions with partner choice, or the decision that does that dog actually need to breed or not. We're not sure, right?
Yeah, the hard part is that saying that too much information can be dangerous. 30 years ago we didn't have this technology, so you'd never know. So you're making those breeding decisions on other parameters. So you cannot have everything in these single dogs. You've got to decide you have a less than spectacular coat. Maybe a dog isn't tall enough. Maybe it's shorter ranging, and whatever it is, you won't have the perfect package. So it's a balance of and you know this as a breeder, what you're trying to bring together.
I err on the side of caution with a lot of these things, and I've had fairly heated discussions with people who are far more experienced than I am about it. And I always say, well, if the dog's a carrier for whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, and this other dog is equal to that dog, and it's not a carrier for anything, it's genetically clear as far as we know with the information that we have to test for right
Right.
now, then why wouldn't I choose the clear dog? And they always come back and they say, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Stop doing that. That's a beautiful dog that should be bred.
Yes, yes. So into that, genetics is not my area of expertise, quite frankly. I hated genetics because I had a terrible professor in college that I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But the good news is we have very knowledgeable people, PhD level people that understand genetics on our breeding committee. And what I am now more comfortable with the concept that not only do people want to naturally breed the outstanding dogs, the great dogs, they're great in their coat, temperament, performance scores and things, but on the sidelines, there's even a larger population of very good or good dogs. And we are now starting to breed those dogs because there's a huge recognition in our club about the necessity to keep that extremely broad genetic footprint. Because an animal that is never bred, those genetics potentially are lost forever. So why wouldn't you want to capture that, or in a sibling? And so it's hard for people to get their heads wrapped around it because everybody wants the best of the best. But from a small breed, rare breed standpoint, we have to treat them like they do in the zoos, like with the giant pandas. You wouldn't just breed two. You're gonna try to create pairings so that you maintain that genetic diversity generation after generation and 100 years down the road. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that at some point I'll listen to enough people that have been doing it much longer than I have, and I'll finally just say, all right, they're right. I need to stop. But for now, I keep erring on the side of like, why would I do that when I have this?
Yeah.
But let's get back to the Cheskys a little bit. I think we nerded out on DNA a little bit too much here. Yeah. Tell me about their temperament.
So this breed of dog is really very well known for its calm disposition. And what I mean by that is across the board, they are renowned for their off switch. They're the family dog that can turn it on in the field and then come home and be with the kids. And what's interesting, again, going back to that International Sportsman's Expo where our club had a booth for the last few years, I remember on more than one occasion, people would come by and go, is this normal? Because we'd have 4 dogs strewn across the floor, you know what I mean? And you've got aisleways of people, 6 people deep, strollers, kids, noise, people blowing duck calls. It's an outdoor expo, and these dogs are absolutely chill, and people are flabbergasted that the dogs aren't whining, pulling on the tether. They are really and they're bred for that. So the calm demeanor, and they're extremely, I would say, temperament-wise, on the biddable side. Very cooperative dogs. And people might mistake that for being soft, which I don't find that to be a bad thing at all. You don't want to have a dog that's a knucklehead and needs a firm hand. We want them to want to work with you, so they are known to be very, very cooperative. And that's the dog doing the things for you without being asked, staying within range. When you turn to go in a different direction hunting, they'll swing naturally in front of you and stay within gun range. They will change their distance according to the density of cover to kind of maintain contact with their owner and handler. And those are things that are instinctive, genetic. You don't train for that. So I would say calmness is what they're known for, and the cooperation is what they're known for. That might make them a little bit distinct.
Sure. And this is a dog that'll come back around and check in with you after making a cast, making a loop or whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And preferably as they get more experience, they don't come all the way in. They'll just do a drive-by, flash an eye, okay, there you are, and then move on. So I've always loved that about the breed. I know other breeds can do that as well, but you asked about particular personality or temperament traits. That would be one that's fairly universal. Yeah, it's good.
Sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is when my dog makes eye contact with me when she's kind of rounding out, she's gone and she's hit her, one, two, three targets that she wants to hit on this side, and she knows she's going to come back around and hit up the other side, but she'll always look back. And even if it's, 100 yards away, I know that we made eye contact real quick. She's got her confidence back, and then she's going to go back to hitting her next target.
Yeah, and what I mean by also they're real in tune to their handlers. During judging and evaluation, especially when we have apprentice judges in the field, they might be looking at a dog that, in their opinion, is perhaps not ranging out to their abilities to search out cover in a manner that they might prefer. But I look at that apprentice, I said, listen up, look at what that handler's doing. And that handler may be somebody in their mid-70s, taking their time. So I look at that apprentice, I say, do you understand that that dog has dialed it back for that handler? And had that dog been sent to a home with a younger person with longer legs and just a more youthful stride, that dog could get out there. So that's, again, that sort of unwritten sort of cooperation, that bond that they have, I can speed my dog up and push him out by just stretching out my legs. If I need them to come in, I'll slow it down, and they come in without a whistle or a command. So that's that cooperative spirit.
Yeah, it makes it kind of fun, doesn't
Oh,
it?
way fun. Yes, absolutely.
And now, how old is your dog that you've got right now?
Mr. Aiden is currently 7 years old. So
7 years old. And he's the dog that you took to the Czech Republic?
that is correct. Yep. So he's a perfect time for him, absolutely in his prime. A lot of experience. There's nothing he hasn't seen now. He's calm, he's confident. And the World Cup that I took him to is only every 5 years. So he was way too young when the first World Cup happened. It was actually 6 years ago. This was an opportunity, and if I didn't take it now, he might be a little too old to compete well. So I took a chance and I brought him over, and I'm very glad I did. It was an extremely memorable experience to take a dog and not only be in a different environment, different culture, different testing venue. I love a good challenge. And it was really fun to see him up against, the dogs that are in their natural environment, that were raised there. And to bring him from the U.S. and bring him over there and compete well was quite fun.
Now, have you traveled internationally with dogs before?
No, this was the first time. So it was quite an ordeal and rather expensive. And I reached a point where I had made a decision that I couldn't do it financially. And then word got through the club that Aiden was not going and Anna wasn't going to go with the dog. People stepped up and started a kind of fund internally, which was, on the one hand, extremely embarrassing. But on the other hand, I thought, you know what? This is going to be such good exposure for our club. I want an American presence there on the international floor. This is a breed-only event. Cesky Fousek from all over the world participated. There were dogs from Slovakia, the Netherlands, Germany, France. We tried to get the South African club and the New Zealand club to come as well, but logistics and finances, they couldn't swing it. So my dog was the, shall we say, North American continent representative at the world event. Yeah, it was good.
I'm glad that that the club stepped up and sent you over there. Just getting back to viability and sustainability of the breed in North America. If you want to maintain that genetic diversity, then the European breeders, the European clubs need to take us seriously over here. And the only way you do that is by showing them, hey, these are some of our best dogs. These are the ones that, we take it seriously. The handlers take it seriously, and they're invested in the breed. So I'm really glad that they did that, and it sounds like you guys did pretty well.
Absolutely well. And I'll tell you, you hit the nail on the head. That was the primary motivator to go, was to build on our relationship with the parent club, the Czech club. The Czechs did come to the United States for the first time, not the first time, but a large group of them came in 2017 to look at our testing program, and present some information. And when they walked away, we had a standing invitation to go to the Czech Republic in 2018, a year later. And that was the inaugural first Cesky Fousek World Cup. And 8 of us from the national club, myself included, went there 6 years ago to this event, which was essentially an international event in a spirit of sort of friendly competition, not there to win trophies or pound chests, but to network, build friendships, build relationships, see each other's dogs, because we need to help each other and share genetics like semen or whatever. So after that experience, I did not have my dog with me, of course. My dog was very young then. I thought I might be crazy enough to bring him, 5 or 6 years later. And I did this time. And he was well prepared, had a tremendous showing. And I know for certain, because I was told by several individuals, that a few of the Czech judges were not always a fan of international handlers, or of even having the dog outside of the home country, Czech Republic, which is, I think, a tremendous disadvantage. I don't know why they would think that, but I took great pride in knowing that my dog's performance impressed them. And you can tell by the way they spoke to you, the way they shook your hand, the judges, after the disciplines, the way it was apparent to me they gave my dog additional time in one of the search disciplines, because my dog was struggling a bit in the field search. From the one standpoint, it was in sugar beet fields. My dog has never seen sugar beet fields, and it's a row crop. Nope. And it's tremendously difficult to navigate. Sugar beets, the tops, just like carrots, when carrots are mature, the carrot tops poke out of the soil surface. Well, these sugar beets are the size of grapefruits and volleyballs, and so you're tripping on those, and these long leaves sort of have a thick rubbery consistency of like cabbage leaves. On top of which, there was some torrential 3 days of rain in this, the region the World Cup was held in is known for, historically, for producing the clay soil used for bricks. So you have this clay soil, torrential rain, and sugar beets, and a dog who's never seen this, and of course, he's not moving out. And in one of the individual searches, I noticed that my dog was out twice as long as the other dogs. And as it turned out, the judges saw continued improvement in my dog throughout the day, but particularly in the search, that they gave him more time to show the improvement and the progression. So where we started might have been a failing score, and we ended up having a passing score because they saw a dog that started to figure it out. And I really appreciated that. So that's what I meant, where the judges were realizing my dog has it, and performed well in very, very difficult, unfamiliar terrain. So out of 34 dogs, this is how difficult it was, 11 dogs completed, finished. That means the dogs that did not finish or complete failed or got a non-passing score in a very important event, and no longer, they were asked to leave. They were no longer going to finish the competition. So pretty intense. So very, very pleased my dog passed, and he got a prize too. And I was very proud of him. Yeah, he did well.
So this is a pass or fail event.
Essentially pass or fail. You get a prize 1, 2, 3, but it's essentially a pass or fail. Yeah.
Sure, but it's not a competition like a field trial or anything like
you're
that.
Not looking at, they did select, there's an overall best dog, that had the highest numerical score, prize 1. They did select a best dog in field, best dog in water, that didn't necessarily correspond to, score pricing. It's just the overall best dog in field or water. So they did that, which is nice. Yep.
Sure. And what are the events that the dogs are tested on?
So it's interesting you ask. Yeah, it was quite different. So the Europeans evaluate the dogs differently than we do. And they have disciplines that are foreign to us as U.S. competitors. The disciplines that are foreign or different, for example, is something called a group hunt. So you're not hunting in a brace. You are hunting in a group of 5 or 6 dogs with handlers in a field, and the handlers are spaced out about 30 or 40 meters between them. And when the group hunt commences, you'll have judges stationed between the handlers. You move forward as a line, and your dog is supposed to be hunting for your gun in front of you in a systematic search pattern, the way that you would think a field spaniel would. Not to interfere with or cross over the other dog or the other hunter, be obedient, all that nonsense. And, for me, it's a big deal just to hunt in a brace, to have manners. You just want the dog to back and have manners. Now you have 5 or 6 dogs in the field with all the different energy and personalities. I was stressed, but it turned out quite well. The dog did well. I did have to practice with a whistle to teach him with some hand signals and whistle to come around, to turn, and to kind of teach him to do that systematic pattern. I didn't love it. It's not the way I enjoy hunting, but it's a very important part of how they hunt dogs in Europe. The Cesky Fousek are needed to push hares and roe deer and pheasants out of these fields, and that systematic group hunt allows them to be successful. It's sort of like a driven pheasant hunt, but you don't have blockers. You're working through the field together. The other one that was very unique and different is in the World Cup. There was a discipline called a calmness at water. In the other tests that the Czechs do, it's called a driven hunt, where dogs are lined up on a forest road or track. And this, for us, we actually lined the dogs up near water where we did water work, and you had 15 or 16 dogs lined up, spaced about 20 or 30 meters apart. The dogs can stand, sit, or lay down next to you, on or off leash. Off leash is highest score. On leash, it's 1 point less. And you have a gun, or in this case, I had a gunner next to me that was doing the shooting, and it is a 10-minute discipline where every handler shoots 5 times when the judge points to you. So for 10 minutes, they're shooting up and down the line, and the dogs need to be on their post. Quiet, calm, not moving, not breaking, not being vocal. And the purpose of this is to demonstrate calmness, in which I mentioned that the breed is known for calmness, right? This is a very important test for the Czechs because they don't want the whiny dogs, the screamy, yelpy dogs that can't control their excitement, because that will scare game that is being driven through the forest to these hunters. So that driven hunt, which we called calmness near the water, because they lined all the handlers up at the water, was something that I was terrified of. Because my dog, gets a little excited and whiny. But I was very quiet and shushed him a few times. The judges never heard us, and he got calmer as the discipline went. And we got, believe it or not, a 4. We got an excellent. And that was one of the disciplines I was freaking out about, because I thought, it's different. We don't ever do this. I don't have opportunities to set this up for practice. Think about it in the United States. So yeah. I had maybe 2 chances with 2 friends to do this once. And then the other discipline I'll mention that was very unique, but has its purposes rooted in their hunting tradition, was something called discipline in water. The dogs are, in this discipline, asked to go into a large lake or smooth body of water, no vegetation, no cattails, on command. They say, the translation is go to water. So they send the dog into the water, and they want that dog to go out 40, 50 meters. And to show control and searching, if you whistle and send them to the left, they want the dog to swim and search to the left. If you whistle and push them back, they want him to go back. It's basically like Labrador Retriever kind of discipline casting, which to me was incredible the first time I saw it, but it made 0 sense. I said, that's nice, but I don't understand what the point is. We don't ever do that in the United States. What are you doing? Well, in 2018, we had an opportunity to go on a duck hunt in the Czech Republic, which I had never seen how they do it, and it's actually jump shooting. The Czechs maintain these hunt preserves in these villages with these ponds and lakes where they kind of feed the mallards over the winter. So you have these wild mallards that stick around their home ponds, and these ponds are huge. They could be 20, 30 acres. And these ducks are savvy. After the first round of jump shooting, they're going to raft up and go to the middle of the lake or pond. And then your hunt's over, unless, of course, you can command your dog to go to water. So these dogs are very confident swimmers, and these hunters will then put their dogs in the water to go swim and push these rafted up ducks out of the center of the pond to get them into flight, to give them another opportunity to shoot. So again, this discipline, this open water test was one that I had to specifically train for. And I just wanted a passing score. And it turned out I trained so well that my dog had the top score in our group. He swam like a Labrador Retriever. So I was very, very proud of him for that. And then the last thing I would say that's probably going to be interesting for our American listeners, for U.S. hunters, is the way we train finished dogs and expect a polished finished dog to be steady to, wing, shot, fall. And it's about the handler moving in to flush the game, and the dog at that point is not involved. In the Czech Republic, it's flipped on its head. They have a discipline called advancing, or it's a skill that they expect their dogs to be able to do, which is to point, relocate, point, and they do not want the handler to push the game up. It could be a European hare or pheasant. They actually will command the dog to push the game up. So the Cesky Fousek, who's a pointer, they kind of want them to go push that bird and flush it up to kill it. And that kind of freaked me out during the World Cup. I'm like, well, I'm not going to backtrack on all our training. I'm just going to do what I meant to do. Fortunately for me, the birds got nervous enough that when I walked and I was abreast of my dog on point, thankfully, the bird moved and I didn't have to kind of ask my dog to do anything. So the group hunt was weird. Takes some training. And how they do the advancing was different, and that calmness at water to demonstrate the calm temperament of the breed was very different.
With the group hunt, is there an expectation that your dog woes and on a shot or on a flush?
No, because your dog may not be involved or see the bird. So the dog involved with the game contact and pointing is really the only dog that they're watching. What I learned very quickly is what the judges essentially want to see happen is when there is game engagement, they don't want the other dogs to interfere. So you can command them to be still where they are or call them back to you, and they need to be obedient. Okay. So then that sequence on that dog who's pointing is finished. And then what they'll actually do is they want the retrieve of a fresh, warm, killed game bird to be done by all the dogs in the field. So they will take that killed hare or pheasant, in this instance it was pheasants for us, and actually throw it out into the field. It's a visible thrown retrieve, and they will demand that each dog in turn retrieve that pheasant. Here's what's tricky. Some dogs take offense to that, because there's another dog, Spoogie, on that bird. So you had to kind of make sure, and I did train for it, where my dog, Aiden, had to go retrieve a duck or a pheasant or whatever we were using, or a pigeon that other dogs had picked up. 4 other dogs before my dog was sent, to make sure he understood, I don't care what's on it, you get it. Yeah.
That's interesting. When I think about, I try to imagine running that event or, testing in that event. And I think about the number of times that I've hunted and realized that myself and my partner have flip-flop dogs, and I've got his dog in front of me and my dog's over in front of him. And we don't care. I know most of their dogs, but it's just kind of funny. Like, oh yeah, Rocky's over here, and hey, you got Skeet, right? Oh yeah, she's over here. Okay, good.
Yeah. So what was really kind of trippy for me and just bizarre is in our hunt tests or what our field trials, there's the search portion, And of course, they're looking to see that the dog is actually ranging out and far enough and, hunting's, likely cover to hold game, not missing cover that would hold game and all that. In the Czech Republic, there's 3 parameters that are subcategories under that hunting. Like there's a group search, and then of course each dog has an individual search for 20 minutes. Okay, and they have a system, speed, and perseverance. And the system is that methodical sweeping out to the left, searching out in front, sweeping out to the right, the systematic and pattern windshield wiper, like I think of them as like a field spaniel would do, is what they want, that they're looking for that. And of course, for my dog, who hunts in the Western U.S., thank you very much, Mr. 200 yards out, 250 yards out, and I don't, he's independent of me. He does what he does, and his nose follows the wind. So it was hard for me to get, not hard, but it was just an effort to have him understand right now we're doing this. So his they called it his system. He got a 2, which is just passable. His speed, he also got a 2, and my dog has a set of wheels. That boy can move. In the sugar beet fields, it's very difficult. You have to almost like lope over the vegetation. He had to like jump over the vegetation. It's very physically demanding and tiring, but he was slowed down at times. He didn't kind of move out like he normally would in, let's say, a grass field or an alfalfa field or oak scrubland, where I'm used to hunting quail and things. So his speed was a 2, but his perseverance, because my dog's in shape, he got a 4. So again, there were some different ways of evaluating the dogs that is just totally foreign to me as an American hunter. And again, I go back to, it's not how I hunt, but it's how they hunt. These Czech hunters, you're in confined spaces, parameters, fields. You can't have dogs running amok or getting into the edge of the forest before the hunters do. You need to methodically kind of move through these fields purposefully and leave no game behind, because the way the hunting, I'll digress for one moment, it's kind of interesting because it's different. The way the Czech hunters work their dogs is you must belong to a hunt club. And that hunt club is organized by region. And each hunt club has a minimum requirement that they need to procure or produce numbers of hares killed, foxes killed, boars, the wild boars, or the roe deer. And it's a quota you have to meet. If you don't meet that quota, there are some penalties or fines that they pay to the local farmers. So there's this cooperative sort of hunters are there providing a service to get the foxes and the roe deer and the boar and out of the fields that are harming the crops. And if you don't, you owe some fines. So the hunters have an actual purpose. So the hunting needs to be organized and efficient in a way that you're actually producing game. It's not I'm going to go on a family adventure and I feel like doing this today. So it's different. Their hunting is very different there.
That's interesting. That just reminds me of hunting deer in some, maybe not quite suburban areas, but some areas where people didn't want as many deer as they had around their houses. And I was being pretty selective about the deer that I was taking off of this one property, and the property owner wasn't very happy with that. And she said, you need to just start killing some deer. Don't wait for the big buck. Just whatever walks by needs to go.
Yeah. So in the spirit of kind of these Cesky Fousek, serving a purpose in the community in these villages and stuff, they're revered. I mean, they are held in high esteem. And an example would be when they have a local celebration or a parade, for example, and the local policemen or firemen, would have a float or something. The hunters and their dogs are a part of those parades. They are celebrated as a part of the community for the service they provide. And these hunt clubs have minimum and maximum numbers of types of dogs that are necessary to get the job done. They've got trackers. They got dogs that go to ground for foxes, and they have the pointers. And so each club, according to the number of hectare area, again, have to produce a certain number of game per year in the management system. But they also are allowed to have, 10 pointing dogs, 10 teckles, the little wire-haired doxies or whatever, to get the job done. So it was fascinating to learn about that.
Yeah, the amount of control that goes into it, that's pretty pretty wild.
It's
That's pretty
different
interesting. I'm
because we're
glad we don't
used to
have
just
that over here.
we're just throwing our dog in a truck and go have fun times. So again, it's just different.
Yeah, I want to pull up Onyx and find a good cover for rough grouse and just
Yes.
drive out there and hope I don't see anybody else,
Yes.
you know?
So I will say, going back to the 2017 when the Czech judges came here, and I know that their eyelids were twitching because they were looking at our dogs just, excuse my language, but running balls out and getting out 100 yards, 150 yards, and they were shaking their heads thinking these dogs were out of control, when in fact they didn't appreciate or realize the vastness of our country, the vastness of the terrain we hunt our dogs. And I think the hunt weekend or the testing weekend was just the beginning of their education, because we did actually take them on some pheasant hunts and stuff and put guns in their hands to watch our dogs work the terrain. And then they began to understand that the American landscape here in North America and where we actually hunt this breed is not what it is at home for them. So it was good for them to see
Sure.
that.
Yeah, different purpose, right?
Yes.
So interesting to hear that you were a little bit maybe nervous about calmness at the water because you're a pretty big duck hunter, aren't you?
Very much so. But here's the thing. I'm now convinced there's like the whiny gene and the non-whiny gene. And the reason I say that is because Aiden is always a little squeaky in the beginning till he gets his first duck, and then he's good. Okay. We've also had dogs in our family, Labradors, that were super vocal, and just, it's not fun, quite frankly. We currently have a 3-year-old Labrador Retriever. She's a Fox Red Lab. She's a British Lab from Duck Hill Kennels in Tennessee. And I specifically went to that kennel specifically to get a calm, quiet British Lab. Our little lab is a fire-breathing dragon in the field, and you do not hear her ever without trying. Do you see what I mean? So going back to, I was a little nervous about my needing to put a little WD-40 on my little squeaky guy. I didn't know how he would do with that because he's not retrieving anything, but he actually got calmer and calmer as we went. And again, that's probably part of his genetic heritage. He could control his excitement. I still felt lucky.
I've said from time to time that sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good.
Right? I'm with you on that.
Right. So you're back now and everything went well. So what are your hunting plans for the fall?
I cannot wait. We all wait for this time of year. It's been work, all, spring and summer. So my hunting plans involve typically getting 3 hunting licenses. I got my California, I get my Nevada, and I get Idaho. So the big trip that I'm really looking forward to is to go see good friends of mine in, it would be western central Idaho, friends of mine that have been with this club for 40 years. And they've got 50 acres in remote, rural, nowhere, Idaho, and we will be chasing chukars and huns. And we're pretty close to the Snake River, so I plan to do some mallard hunting there with my dogs as well. I do have a property that I lease for valley quail hunting, and it was in the park fire, unfortunately. The big, devastating, large fire that was started by an arsonist that was in the news about 3 months ago, and it burned about 80% of that property. So I am super devastated by that. I understand that we will be allowed access to hunt birds after we determine what the first green up looks like and how the coveys are doing. So I may lose out on my ability to hunt the valley quail there. Being a Californian, you have to be very smart and willing to drive to find wild birds. So this quail lease was one that was quite special to me. I will be spending more time in Nevada looking for chukar, and maybe go to Idaho twice. And as far as waterfowl goes, my husband, fortunately, belongs to a lovely rice club that's an extremely good shooter outside of Colusa in Northern California. And it's a rotational kind of a rice club. And so we're going to tag team with my dog and my husband's lab about duck retrieving days. So that's where we're going to do our duck hunting. So
Oh, that'll be fun.
Hmm.
I'm not a quail biologist, but I hear all the time that they recover from those wildfires pretty quickly. So, being pretty recent, maybe not this hunting season, but you might find that next season is,
It'll be
pretty
phenomenal, and people need to understand if these animals took a hit, there's no reason to go harass that cubby now. Give them an
right.
opportunity to spread, reproduce, and in a year or two, it's going to be bonanza again. But it again, when you live for hunting, like my husband and I do, and you do as well, and I'm sure most of our listeners, that is a super big bummer to suddenly know that your place to go is maybe not going to happen this year. It just was awful. So yeah, I'll have to get.
Well, maybe an incentive to find, that some other gem that maybe you didn't know about before.
I'm going to spend more time in the Sierras. I actually want to get after mountain quail this year. We've done it sporadically. It's really hard. Those little suckers love to be in that thick manzanita scrub, 45-degree angles. I mean, these guys know how to get away from dogs. So I'm going to probably go to the mountains and do some mountain quail hunting since I need to get creative this year. It'll be fun, though.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And, a lot of that, the Western upland hunting is so different than what we do in the Midwest and in the Great
You guys
Plains.
are predominantly what, grouse hunters or pheasant hunters?
Well, here where I am, I'm just a road show, so I just go somewhere else to find birds. This early in the season, I try to target ruffed grouse, but that's, I mean, that's a tough game. It's a really tough game when the leaves are still on the trees. So you better be lightning fast with that shotgun. Otherwise, you'll just be hearing birds fly away, which I do a lot of. I do a lot of hearing birds fly away. But you know, come in here in a few weeks, the leaves are down, then we'll have better access to rough grouse in the North Woods, and then pheasants open up a lot of places in the very end of October or early November. And here in Indiana, we don't have a lot of anything, so I'm a traveling road show during hunting season, and all the puppies come in here in a little over a month, so my hunting season's going to be a little bit abbreviated this year
Oh,
anyway.
oh wow, yeah, for sure, for sure. So here's just kind of a funny story. Like I'm a West U.S. Western hunter. I'm used to big open spaces, rolling hills, quail, chucker hills, things like that. Many many years ago, through the dog club, I had invitation. I've been twice now to go woodcock and grouse hunting.
Hmm.
And I'm used to big open spaces. And my dear friend took me out in these little forest tracks with his beater truck, and I mean, everything was scratching the side of his truck. And then he stops on the road in this forest. And I don't know what kind of trees. I wasn't familiar. They might have been, I don't know, maples or whatever. And I look at him and I'm like, where are we going? Like for woodcock and grouse. He goes, and he pointed right out my passenger side window, right there. And I open up my passenger side door and I have to shove it to get it open because there's so much, vegetation and trees. And I'm like, there? He goes, yep. So I couldn't. I thought you people were crazy, the grouse hunters, because I literally had to step sideways and hold my gun vertical to get between it. And anytime you wanted to get a shot, you get that swing. You're about to pull the trigger, and boom! You hit a branch, you hit a tree, and we did get birds. There might have been a few curse words. It was very different. Hats off to the woodcock grouse hunters. That is a completely different game. Super fun. Once I got the swing of it, took a few days to get the swing of it.
It is. It's a much different game, and if your goal is to get out and see birds and put one or two in the bag, then in a lot of places you can do just fine walking the logging roads. You're gonna I think half the birds that you see are right along the logging roads. So you could walk those roads. Some bird's going to flush up and you can shoot it. If your dog's running the road with you, your dog can get a point right on the road. And then you can go push that bird and you can shoot it. But you'll only see half your birds. If you want to have access to the most birds possible, you need to hit the roads and you need to get into the covers. And honestly, I think it's a team game. I think you need 2 hunters per dog in order to have the most success.
Oh, I believe that. And I feel that way with valley quail because these birds use that vegetation to advantage. And I remember one particular day, I will never forget it because of how incredibly frustrating it was. My husband wasn't able to come with me on a quail hunt, and I took our previous dog, our female Belle, out for valley quail. And as much as Aiden is a phenomenal hunting dog, she was a quail specialist. She was a heat-seeking missile that just floated over the terrain, just that effortless kind of could go all day kind of dog. And she was smaller, but she would just boop, pin it and wait for you. You'd go up, and the problem was it was that ceanothus, that big buckbrush, that thick stuff, gnarly stuff. And it didn't matter how carefully you planned your approach. If you came from the other side, it didn't matter. You could hear them popping out. You would never get a shot because you could never see them. It was horrible. And I remember she pointed 7 or 8 times, and we came away with nothing because I didn't have a clean shot. So that's a testament to having that second gunner, the second angle. I was pissed. I was frustrated for the dog, but she gave me the super stink eye. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Your mom sucks. I couldn't hit anything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sometimes just part of hunting in some of that vegetation like that.
Mm-hmm. The birds were there.
It is, hopefully.
We just couldn't get them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, that's why in the grouse woods we always count by the number of flushes, not by the number of birds in the bag.
Yeah. Okay. I have heard that. Yep.
So I've had you on for a while. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the Cesky Fouseks?
Yeah, I actually had 2 little things to kind of just mention as far as type. In case people are wondering how is it similar or different to other breeds that are maybe more recognizable. I would say that the Cesky Fousek is a medium-sized, kind of medium speed dog meant for on-foot hunter. So this is not a field trial kind of a dog. They structurally, when you kind of look at the dog, I would say that they are taller than a Griffon, and they're a little more racy in their look if you compare them to a German Wirehair or Draughtar. So for people that are football fans, I've used this analogy for quite a long time. If you line up a wire-haired pointing Griffon, a Cesky Fousek, and a Wirehair or a DD, I would say that Griffon is your running back, the Cesky Fousek is your wide receiver, and the DD or Wirehair would be more like your tight end. So it gets kind of a picture in your head about the type. There are 2 colors for the breed. That's something people aren't aware of. Actually, there's a brown phase and a white phase, and the white phase is really just liver ticked with plates, varying degrees of darkness, but they're still considered a white dog. I'm not sure people knew that. And generally speaking, they have the harsh, dense, and more flatter-lying coats, including on top of the head and the ears. They don't have a lot of fuzz. They're more smooth on the top. So just to kind of get kind of an image in people's heads of what they look like. Females are probably, 45 pounds or so. Males typically about 65 pounds. Females are about 60 centimeters high. Males somewhere between 64 66 centimeters. So, yeah. So my plug for the Fousek would to say, I hope people look into the breed. I hope people come to, the booths when they're at shows, come to a test. We have a website that showcases the different regional chapters and when tests are. We love for people to come out and see these dogs and see the puppies because it's different than looking at pictures and video online. I hope that people aren't opposed to some of the things that we require from the puppy owners and that they embrace and understand that they are actually helping protect and propel this breed into the future because it's a remarkable dog breed.
Excellent. That's a great place to close it out right there, Anna. I really appreciate you for being on the show. How can people contact you?
So probably the best way is to go to Cesky Fousek North America website, and there's some information for either puppy request or contact for more information. There's some buttons there. Yep.
Great. Okay, and I'll make sure to link that in the show notes.
And Facebook. That's the other thing I forgot. We do have a club Facebook presence. Cesky Fousek North America on Facebook. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, Anna, thanks so much for dialing in and for talking with me for quite a while now.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to episode number 39 of the Whoa Post podcast. If you did, be sure to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check us out on Facebook or Instagram at the Whoa Post, and you can look at our dogs on our website, www.thewhoapost.com/gallantgundogs. And if you'd like to advertise on the Whoa Post podcast or contact me for any reason, you can shoot me an email at bill@thewhoapost.com. Stay steady and God bless.